Okay, think about this for a second. If you had a box of priceless jewelry, you wouldn't just leave it out on your front porch, right? No way. You'd lock it up tight in a safe. Well, in our digital world, your data, that's your priceless jewelry. But what happens when the digital safes we trust have broken locks? Today, we're going to find out.
All right, let's really dive into this analogy because it just perfectly nails the problem. So, storing your jewelry in a cardboard box? Well, in the digital world, that's exactly like storing your password as plain, simple, readable text. Anyone can just open it and look. Using a flimsy toy lock? That's like using some old, weak encryption that hackers can literally break in minutes. And oh, this one's a classic. Hiding the key right under the doormat. That's what a developer does when they hard-code an encryption key right into the application's code. And sending your valuables in a clear bag for the whole world to see? Yep, that's what happens every time you use an unencrypted HTTP connection.
So let's actually put a name to this whole problem. Before we can even start thinking about fixing these locks, we really need to understand what we're up against. So what exactly is a cryptographic failure? Well, according to the security experts at OWASP, a cryptographic failure isn't just about your data getting stolen. It's really about why it can be stolen. It points to very specific mistakes in how we protect information. This applies whether that data is just sitting on a server, what we call at rest, or if it's flying across the internet, which we call in transit. The bottom line is the protection is either totally missing or it's just not strong enough to do its job. Now, what's really wild is that most of these catastrophic failures, they actually boil down to just a handful of surprisingly common and pretty basic mistakes. So let's break down the 4 biggest ways that people can accidentally leave that digital safe wide open. First up, the most obvious error of all, using no lock. At all. This is when an app stores your password, your credit card number, or any other sensitive info as just simple, readable text. If a hacker manages to get into that database, there's no backup plan. It's all just sitting right there for them, completely exposed. Okay, next we've got what I call the illusion of security. This is what happens when companies use really outdated encryption methods like MD5 or SHA-1. I mean, these were once the gold standard, but with today's computers, they can be cracked in minutes. It's exactly like putting a toy plastic lock on a real bank vault. It might look like it's secure, but it's not going to stop anybody who's serious about getting in. This one is almost painfully obvious. You've gone to all the trouble to encrypt the data, which is great, but then you store the key to unlock it right next to the data itself. Or, even worse, you write the key directly into the application's code for anyone to find. It completely defeats the entire purpose of having a lock. An attacker who finds the safe also finds the key taped right to the side. And finally, what about when your data is on the move? Well, if you've ever logged into a website and you looked up at the address bar and saw it said HTTP instead of that secure HTTPS, you basically just sent your username and password across the internet in a see-through envelope. Anybody who's watching that network traffic can just read it. So I know these mistakes might sound a little technical, maybe a bit abstract, but when attackers find and exploit them out in the real world, the consequences are anything but abstract. They are absolutely devastating. I mean, let's really think about that for a second. When a huge company, one that holds some of the most sensitive data you can imagine, gets this stuff wrong, what really is the worst that can happen? This number, 147 million. Back in 2017, this was how many people had their most sensitive personal information exposed in the infamous Equifax data breach. It was a complete catastrophe, rooted in a whole chain of security failures, including, you guessed it, cryptographic ones. And the fallout was just massive. Equifax got hit with over $500 million in fines. But the real cost? A complete loss of trust from millions of people whose social security numbers, birth dates, you name it, were stolen. And you want to know the worst part? The attackers were inside their system for months before anyone even noticed. Okay, so that was the horror story. But here's the good news. We absolutely know how to prevent these kinds of disasters. Building a secure digital fortress isn't some secret art. It's really about using the right tools and just following well-established best practices. So, how do we do it right? Well, first, instead of storing a password as plain text, we use what's called a strong hashing algorithm, like bcrypt. This process mathematically scrambles your password into a long, jumbled mess of characters that's impossible to reverse. Next, we always use HTTPS, the secure version that encrypts all the data as it travels. And finally, we just get rid of those weak, broken algorithms and replace them with strong, modern ones, like Argon 2, which are specifically designed to stand up to modern attacks. And you know, it doesn't even stop there.
A truly secure system forces HTTPS on every single page. It uses strong encryption like AES 256 for data that's being stored. That's the same level of security the government uses for top secret information. And instead of hard coding keys, it uses dedicated services. Think of them like digital Fort Knox for your keys to manage them securely. It's all about creating layers of defense and then constantly testing those layers to find any weaknesses. So we've walked through the problems, the disasters, and the solutions. But let's bring it all home. Why should any of this technical stuff matter to you in your day-to-day life? I love this quote because it just makes it so crystal clear. Think about it. You can have the world's best security guard standing at the front door of a building, but if all the valuables inside are just sitting out in the open, that guard doesn't matter much, does he? Cryptography is that last and arguably most important line of defense for what's actually valuable, your data. And that kind of leaves us with one final thought. Every single day, we trust dozens of different services with our digital lives. So the next time you type in a password or submit your personal info, just ask yourself, is the service on the other end using a real safe, or is it just a cardboard box with a toy lock?